What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the BlockHash podcast. Today, I have another exciting guest. I have the co-founder and CEO Mark of Fuse Network, a crypto payments and DeFi platform that's simplifying the process for communities, businesses, and developers by combining blockchain technology with AI to help businesses seamlessly transition into Web3. We're going to dive into Fuse Network more today in this episode with Mark. He's on the show today already. Mark, how you doing, man? It's a pleasure to have you on.
Nice to meet you, and thanks for having me.
Likewise, pleasure's all mine. Would love to learn a little bit more about your backstory and what your journey has kind of been like. Getting into Web3. Everyone's got a very interesting story. I hear them all the time. Curious where you started out and how you wound up in this wonderful world of crypto and blockchain and AI.
Thanks for the intro, but this has been a real roller coaster for the last 12 years. I've been doing it full time since 2013. So the first time I heard about Bitcoin, I just wanted to buy a whole uh, like I just wanted to hold one Bitcoin. Like it wasn't hard to buy one full Bitcoin. Too bad I didn't buy more than that. It was $20 back then in 2013. And My background is e-commerce. I started in building e-commerce when I was about 14, started my first company. And I always believed, it was long before crypto, that in the future people will not say e-commerce. They will just say commerce. It's just that when it was new, a little bit like crypto, I think people are um, definitely today, don't do this distinction, but it was really, really a big, like basically paying online in the year 2000 is a little bit like using stable coins nowadays. So you can draw a lot of parallels. So that's like the meta, but like a specific reason was just understanding from non-American eyes the hurdles of merchants if they don't have access to Stripe. And we're talking about 12 years ago, and I don't think a lot has changed since. The business models haven't changed. If anything, the problem is even exacerbated. So I'll pause here. I'll give like a real quick breakdown. So I started BitGo, not the BitGo that the Bitcoin 12 years ago, which was one of the first brokers. Then we wanted to basically offer pay with Bitcoin 12 years ago, and we just realized nobody wanted to pay with Bitcoin. So our first attempt to use this technology with e-commerce failed. I don't think people want to pay with stocks or gold. It's not that there's no demand for it. It's not user friendly. There's a lot of friction, and even if you remove the friction, which we did. And again, it was 12 years ago. It was amazing UX. Nobody used it. So that's basically why I'm doing Fuse today. We started working on colored coins, which was an overlay protocol. There were no blockchains back in the day. There was only Bitcoin. And we actually worked with Vitalik Buterin on this. He wrote the first white paper. He worked with us on the first kind of like overlay protocols on top of Bitcoin. I think this is what pushed him. Not. I think he said that this is what pushed him to build Ethereum. And back in 2014, it was blasphemy to start a new chain. So my startup was one of the first kind of big blockchain startups in the world, and definitely one of the first ones in Israel. It was the very early days of blockchain because banks liked the technology. They didn't like Bitcoin. Today they speak very differently about Bitcoin and blockchain. But back in the day, it was like taboo. Don't say Bitcoin, say blockchain, because we like the technology, we just don't like the asset, we don't like the currency. And I think that was a mistake. In retrospect, it's not a product that you can, like, so early in the day, you can't really say, let's only focus on the blockchain. The blockchain is the only thing that's interesting. I think fast forward to today, we understand that blockchains are more than just a novelty, like an interesting technology. I think it's really an innovation on the level of like inventing a new database, like a new type of database. And we always believed that in the future businesses will use it. And this is basically what Fuse does. So Fuse is really trying to solve problems for Visa users as opposed to try and solve problems for Ethereum users. We started in 2019. I skipped a lot of steps in the middle, but the focus that I have was always merchant adoption and business adoption. We never thought that blockchains should be consumer facing. Blockchain should always be, under the hood. It's a bit like with Web2. Nobody really cares that how Facebook built their algorithms, or nobody really cares about Google's infrastructure. Most people know Google as a company that made search really comfortable. They know Facebook as the biggest social network. They don't really remember it as a protocol. They don't remember it as an algorithm, as a technology. So the moral of the story is that once business models start to work, when things start to scale, the infrastructure is mature, then we can build really good business models on top of it. And then we'll see giants, that are basically consumer facing. But we're not there yet. So I don't see Ethereum becoming like a household name. And just like people don't know how Stripe works, people are not gonna learn how blockchain works, and they're definitely not gonna be investing in blockchains in order to use them. So it's a totally different use case. Fuse is really targeting the Web3 businesses of the future. We believe that today it's not like the main usage of blockchains, but in the future, most of usage or like most of the fees would be paid by businesses and not by actual consumers. Consumers will get the service for free. So how do we build a blockchain that is transparent, just like Google, Facebook, Amazon? This is the part that I'll leave to the next question.
Awesome, man. No, you touched on a lot of good points there. I want to kind of go back to really quick before diving into the next question, which really kind of goes under the hood here. And you mentioned Google and Facebook, and I think that's a really good analogy. I tell people the same thing all the time. Blockchain is not a consumer-facing technology. It is a back-end technology. Just like Google taps into a network of servers, just like Facebook has an algorithm. Like, you don't care about how it works on the back end. A consumer just wants to get a result from it. In the case of Google, a query. In the case of Facebook, some type of content to consume. The same thing with blockchain. And so I think that's the right approach and the right way to think about it, because I don't think enough people do that in the space. And so there's a lot of UI, UX issues where it's hard for consumers to use it. And then, like you were talking about back then, 12, 13, 14 years ago, whatnot, when you were getting into the space, you're definitely onto something. You're just very early. There not being enough, I think, on ramps and off ramps for people to actually get into crypto and get into Bitcoin at that point in stage probably held back a lot of commerce online that could have been done with crypto. And then the same thing with the banks you mentioned as well. They didn't want to take on risk adverse assets for a long time. There's a lot of regulations. They weren't allowed to touch it. Banks are always getting in trouble anyways, but they didn't want to be in additional trouble. That's actually changed quite a bit now. And hopefully, things will be easier to progress in terms of like e-commerce and crypto. But just want to touch on those real quick, because those were some good points that you brought up. But diving in under the hood with Fuse, I think it's very interesting, some of the things you guys do, and would love to kind of get your take on a few different things. One of them being instant finality, and how Fuse is, creating instant transaction finality, asynchronous transaction processing, more efficient data transfer. Can you kind of talk about some of those things that kind of make the engine run a bit for the Fuse network?
Yeah, so I think that blockchains, we realized early on that blockchains are really important innovation. And we also understood something that I think a lot of the market already kind of like adopting, this idea that there's gonna be more than one blockchain. And there's gonna be different ecosystems around different use cases, blockchains around different customer audiences, right? So you have already today this developing. You see, blockchains for gaming, blockchains for gambling, blockchains for staking, blockchains for RWA, multiple blockchains for things that are a little bit on the AI side, or things that are more on the business side, or really, I think the narrative of L1, L2 didn't exist when we started Fuse. So basically, what we said to investors is that businesses in the future will use blockchains to store money from a very simple perspective, because currently they trust Stripe to hold their money for them. And the problem with that is that the settlement time is really long, and they need to give up 3% of the revenue. So if you think about the problems that L2 solve today, and you can definitely say that L2s became a thing. Sorry, I would argue even that a lot of L1s are actual L2s, because they don't really offer any innovation on the L1 side. They're really like good consumer brands like Solana. They offer really good wallets, really good last mile integrations, right? A lot of people say Solana is the Apple of blockchains, right? So I feel like over time, people will have this distinction between really super decentralized, super slow, and super stable L1 relative to super fast, super customized L2. And that would be the big differentiator. But what L2s solve right now? Like what problem do they solve? They solve a very niche problem that is not really interesting to solve. And we see so many L2s trying to solve the same issue of trying to save cost relative to L1. I believe that solving this problem is is not the right direction for the space, because it's not a problem that 99% of the world has. It's only a problem that 1% of the world has. So it's really trying to solve problems for Ethereum users. They don't want to pay so much gas, and we're trying as an ecosystem, as a industry, to solve their very niche problem with billions of dollars poured on it, especially since the last cycle. I would say like largely this problem is solved. It was already solved in the last cycle. And I think people disregard the real problem that we have right now, that is much bigger, that merchants are willing to pay, and they don't complain about it, much more than investors pay Ethereum for gas. Merchants pay to Stripe 3% of the revenue. And if you're a food business and you want to use DoorDash or something like that, you're paying 30%. So you have a whole industry that I would argue is much bigger than crypto. It's actually the biggest employer in every economy, in every country in the world. And this industry has notoriously large fees that they pay. And this, we're talking about America. Imagine what happens in other parts of the world. So bottom line, we crypto can solve bigger problems than what it's trying to solve now. And this is what we think we should do with the technology. So how do we take those 12 years of experience and apply them to solve Visa problems, right? So we believe in ZK. We're big believers in ZK. So we're using ZK VM powered by Polygon CDK. This way we can offer scaling off-chain payments and privacy. So this is a big issue with business adoption. We can give the other problem. Blockchains are really have bad pricing models. Imagine what Stripe how Stripe would work if their fees would fluctuate based on their stock price. If the stock price goes up, then they charge more fees. If the stock price goes down, they charge less fees. Probably nobody would use it. One of the most amazing features that Stripe has is their really easy one-size-fits-all business model. Just pay them 3% and that's it. Every business in the world knows that they have a very simple model. Everything is out of the box for 3%. So this is what we're trying to do with Fuse. But in a blockchain world, of course, we can't just charge percentages. We don't do risk management. We can't offer chargebacks, for instance. So what we do offer is you pay $50 a month to get like a very basic tier that includes 10,000 contract interactions. So you can deploy up to 10,000 contracts a month, fixed price. You don't need to worry it's going up or down. And you actually pay for the entire middleware. So you pay for RPC calls, webhooks. For payments, you need instant webhooks, subgraph calls. It used to be if you want to use Ethereum, you need to pay Infura, you need to pay Alchemy, you need to pay Subgraph with the graph, you need to pay some other vendors. On Fuse, you can actually pay $50 a month and access all of those services. So you're paying for the middleware. And the middleware is actually, so you're covering gas and middleware cost. Middleware is actually where most of the heavy lifting is going if we want to create good experience. So offering this to businesses makes blockchains more friendly. So you can think about us as an entry-level blockchain for businesses. If they want to use a blockchain, they'll probably be very complicated to use Solana, very complicated to use Ethereum, really easy to use Fuse. If you actually want to build on a chain.
So, talking about that entryway for those medium-sized, smaller businesses, those wanting to get into the Web3 space, I know you guys have a suite of products that make that a lot easier and make that pretty simple. And we'll talk about all of those. One of them in particular being Fuse Ember was the first one I came across when I was looking into you guys. Can you talk about how that provides a better infrastructure for those small and medium-sized businesses and how that kind of functions as a product?
Yeah, so Fuse Ember is our new version of the chain. We used to have a chain that is very stable, and very decentralized, but it wasn't as performant as the newer chains. Also, it was monolithic. Sorry. It was monolithic, and our architecture, we wanted to be more customized, more scalable and modular. And this is why we're migrating to Ember. This is currently what we're doing in the next 2 months. We also launched a promotion, so you can check it on our website. We want people to discover 5 years of BD, basically, building this use case, working with local operators in Africa, Europe, Asia, demonstrating, this approach, transparent blockchain approach, powered by account abstraction. The only problem is our base layer was slow. It wasn't slow to the point it wasn't usable. It wasn't just as fast as Visa. So we want to make it as performant as Visa. And this is basically what Ember does. Fuse Ember will have a ZK EVM. So that's basically the biggest upgrade. Using ZK, we can scale the chain. We can make it cheaper. We can make the pricing stable. We can also add features. This year, we're going to work on features that allow privacy, which is a really scary word, but businesses have to have privacy. Imagine that you have a business that you put your QR code and all your competitors know how much you earn. You really need to think about shielded transaction. You really need to think about basic privacy for business use cases. And this is something that ZK enables. So Fuse Ember is our newest and latest version, but it's also a very, I would say, important milestone, because optimistic rollups are around, I would say, since the last cycle. Our chain is currently more decentralized, more cheap, and actually faster than the existing rollups. We didn't want to just upgrade to something new just to be less decentralized, more expensive, and slower. So optimistic rollups in this cycle are very mature, but everybody understands that's not the upgrade we're waiting for. ZK rollups, on the other hand, are where optimistic rollups were in the last cycle. So they're still not working yet, like 100%. It's still under development. When I say it doesn't work, I wouldn't say there's like it's a binary thing, work or doesn't. It just needs a little bit of I would say it needs to demonstrate kind of like a track record if we want to say it works, right? So that's basically because it's new, it doesn't have a track record, so it's the new sexy technology. But we don't think that this technology is just like a small upgrade. It changes everything. It makes rollups a lot more, I would say, difficult to operate, but on the other hand, much more scalable. And in the future, we also want to offer things like chargebacks and recurrent payments. Then everything kind of connects together. You need this functionality on the EVM level. You need to have ZK, but you also need to have contract capabilities. It's not one thing or the other. It's really important to do transactions off-chain because if you're buying a cup of coffee, it doesn't necessarily needs to go through the same process like an L1 transaction of $1 million. Doesn't make sense to do the same flow for $5 and $1 million, exactly the same flow. It doesn't make sense to announce on a global ledger or on a global settlement layer it's just like bought $5 worth of coffee at Starbucks. Those things are not supposed to be public, so ZK is a really important technology where you really don't want those transactions to be on chain for various reasons. So that's Fuse Ember. It's a pretty profound upgrade, and also it's really one of our. It's a culmination of like a year and a half of work. We're going to run this with a very big cloud provider. We announce it next week. We also use a partnership with Avail for the DA. And as I said, we're really subscribed into the modular vision. So Fuse becomes a lot more interesting, I would say, to Oracle providers, DeFi protocols, stablecoin issuers, native yield, RWA, LSTL, and things like that. It makes Fuse a little bit more interesting just because the stack is modular.
Continuing forward, I also know that you guys have a AI business agent, which I thought was pretty cool when I was on your guys' website. I believe it's called Edison, right?
Yeah. So everything on Fuse is electricity related, like all of our products,
Yeah.
decisions or choices. It's like voltage, and we have charge, and we have Edison. Imagining, I think doing this for 5 years is like honestly really tough, because this space is not. I wouldn't say this industry is like a traditional industry. I think when people are talking about Bitcoin or about Ethereum, they always mean a network, a technology, and an asset. There's no separation in this world between those three aspects, which makes things really difficult because you're always talking to your customers, and they're also your investors. And I think one of the things I struggled with is really understanding how to decide. Like people talk about the technology but when it's coupled with prices, it's really hard to understand. Are we talking about the token price, or are we talking about the technology? Did Bitcoin technology become better after Trump was selected because the price went up? I don't think technology changed a lot, but before Trump was elected, people thought, oh, the technology is struggling just because the price is not really good. Then the price goes up, suddenly the technology is really good. So I feel like that's the problem we have in crypto. And to really try to like clean the noise and really try to look at at the technology, let's be honest, it's not really usable by most developers. I think the ethos in the last cycle that blockchains are really good for developers, they're just not good for humans yet. I think this was completely debunked. Most developers, 90% of them, shouldn't interact with blockchains because it's not like every person that knows how to code needs to automatically write contracts. I think there should be strong disincentive to write contracts. The whole idea of a contract is that you're building a cloud backend that everybody use, right? You don't want to invent your own backend every time you're building something. You actually want a backend that's already supported by contracts, wallets, exchanges. My point is that AI might be a way to bridge that gap. We don't think that account abstraction is really something that most developers will be able to use. It's very complicated to understand. It's half baked. And it requires a lot of heavy lifting, and this is why AI is really good. AI is kind of like this. When I said let's hide the technology under the hood, AI is a way to achieve that. So we can basically ask an AI to do basic stuff. Once we have the middleware in place, we can ask him to do basic stuff. So, for instance, I want every time somebody that buys on my store, I want to automatically create a cashback system. So there's a lot of backend, a lot of like you need to mint a token, then you need to create this automatic webhook system, then you need to have like a pricing and a liquidity somewhere, and you need to interact with those contracts and automate them. And most of what I said for a developer, it's like individually, those are like a lot of really easy tasks, but combining them together is the real effort. So with Edison, we basically use the account abstraction stack that we have. We ask users right now to play with it. It's currently, we're whitelisting people. It's currently in beta. So we have very basic plugins. It's powered by Eliza. Very basic plugins for blockchain. And in the next year, we're going to just add more and more integrations. So you can ask the Edison to create an airdrop program for my business. It will be able to deploy a new token for your business, create some backing to it. Maybe it's backed by USDC, maybe it's traded somewhere or listed somewhere. Every time somebody purchases, you can buy or sell the token through a DEX. You can do stuff like, for instance, deploy contracts for my customers where they can claim it with Google, with Google or some social login. So Edison can make really complicated things easy without requiring a developer. And moving forward in the future, businesses would want marketing. So we'll have this integration with marketing bots. Businesses would want other services from outside of Fuse. So what we're seeing with Fuse is that we're attracting a customer base of businesses. We're selling them block space for $50 a month. If they need more, they can pay 100, 150. That's basically, a tier, like a SaaS product for them. It's a friendly pricing, and we bundle into it all interactions that they need, all the middleware that they need, and to make this really accessible for non-technical business owners, we have the AI in place, and then they can, in the future, I hope, if the innovation will continue like in the same pace, a business owner could just come and say, here's my competitor, I want to copy him. Like create a marketplace like this, or create a wallet like this, or create a loyalty system like this. Let's face it, this is how most SMBs, most small to medium businesses work. They don't have money to compete with Starbucks, so they go for the next best thing and just copy. When I look at meme tokens and stuff like that, I see a lot of artists that do it. AI allows you to give this capability to every business owner. It doesn't need to be an artist or a developer. Kind of collects skills from different angles of crypto, and you need a blockchain to basically um, be a way to anchor all of this data, anchor all of this activity. And you really need to think about the unit economics. So that's where Edison shines. Hope it makes sense. We're launching it in the next few weeks. Currently, we're finishing the plugin and waiting for Eliza to approve it. And we'll update the community on every step. AI is really, I would say, it's not only hyped in crypto. I think it's starting to be really, really the talk of Silicon Valley, because it wasn't really practical for crypto until recently.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I love the solution with Edison. I think it has a lot of profound benefits for Web2 businesses. As you probably know, just like I do, most Web2 business owners, especially in small to medium-sized businesses, aren't necessarily tech savvy,
Yeah.
and let alone Web3 savvy. So having something there that can help them onboard their businesses into Web3 and make some of those changes and integrations on their behalf and set up certain things like airdrops and whatnot, and get into these different elements, I think is very valuable. So I think that's a really good tool. And then obviously AI is a big industry now, and it's really taken the world by storm over the last couple of years and seems to exponentially be growing and seems to fit in very well with the rest of the blockchain space.
I think that AI and Web3 will become synonymous because Web2, if you remember, before Web2, there was no SaaS and there was no cloud and B2B2C model, right? Stripe is a B2B2C company. People think that it's like a developer platform. It's not. It's a merchant platform that is API first. That was their innovation, and actually the product is made for merchants. It's not really made only for developers. When you think about it, the B2B2C model gets a really big boost with Web3 innovation. So if you remember when Web2 started, people started talking about no code and low code. And I basically created those interesting interfaces for non-technical people that they can go, and suddenly non-technical people had a lot of tools like Wix or like Shopify. Shopify and Wix didn't exist. Like this idea, this model didn't exist before Web2, before this technical innovation. What Web3 allows us to do is to take it a step forward. We don't need this interface at all. We can remove it entirely. We don't need like a lot of buttons and a lot of options. And, there might be a niche for this, but it's probably non-technical people will just talk with their computer. They will verbally describe what they want. They will describe what they want for if they want to use a blockchain or if they don't. It's really a technical question.
Yeah, I generally include AI in the term Web3 as an umbrella. Web3, if you think about it, is an age of semantics and being able to allow machines to read information better and more efficiently and communicate with each other. And that's what we have in the blockchain space. That's what we have in the IoT space. And that's what we have with AI, essentially. So I consider all those things and adjoining technologies that can communicate with each other in any kind of way in this digital age to actually be under that Web3 umbrella. So I wanted to clarify that for the audience because I think they get that confused. Like Web3 is just crypto and just blockchain, but reality, it's a much bigger, broader bucket that I think a lot of tech falls in.
Yeah, it's
Um,
this idea that machine can open a bank account. That's
yeah,
pretty profound,
it is profound. Do you guys have any case studies that you can share or any existing partnerships that can maybe help highlight some of the things being done with Fuse Network? I saw a few with like Freedom Wallet, Mystic Valley. Any of those or any different ones might be similar that you want to highlight as a example per se?
Yeah, so we have a lot of examples. I wouldn't say that most of our usage is by businesses because we don't control who uses our chain. We're decentralized, but we see, and we did a big push, really trying to focus on the unit economics of a transaction and talk with customers. We have some really good, I would say, showcases on Fuse. So one of them, as you mentioned, is Freedom, is we can call it like our flagship operator. They built a game in Thailand, but they also target the whole Southeast Asia region. They're licensed, they have a card with Visa. They have a lot of employees, and they're really trying to push consumer adoption and merchant adoption within that region. And if you go to one of the islands in Thailand, you can actually download the app. You'll have a billboard, and you can actually pay with crypto if you want to rent a ferry. And there's actually a quest game where you can hunt for it's a bit like Pokemon Go, but the Web3 version. So imagine somebody has Bitcoin, and Thailand is a really big, I would say, Bitcoin hub, and then also there's a lot of tourists that come there, and a lot of Bitcoin activity in the whole Southeast Asia. So how do you make this usable for customers? You don't want those users to basically cash out. That would be their only option. And actually, Freedom tries to retain those customers. So it's a non-custodial platform that offers payments for local businesses and just offers people that invest in crypto a place to spend their money. So that's one example with gamifications, trying to make e-commerce usable, but still non-custodial. And it's a platform where businesses can come and actually offer their basically create a loyalty program. And I think that when you think about the business side, nobody really tries to put them in the business shoes. If I'm a business in Thailand and I want to create a loyalty program, 99% of times I will go to Facebook. So it means that I don't really own my loyalty program. I can't really have a loyalty program that is not where the customers are not in my database. I have to use Facebook's database. And generally, it's not really customizable, and it's not really serves the needs of the businesses. And crypto makes a lot of sense in that place. So I don't think investors in crypto care about loyalty that much. But if you go to merchants, loyalty is something like 80% of the retail market. It's ubiquitous. Everybody needs it, and it's very expensive. So only, to compete digitally on your loyalty program with Starbucks is not an easy thing. So crypto can help solve this. Another example we have in Africa is the several operators that we have in different regions. The common denominator is that all of them have a problem accessing dollar yield. It's not even about investing in Bitcoin. Some of them just want to hold dollars because there's inflation issues in the last few years, and they don't really have banking locally, but they do have new regulation for e-money. So they can actually use a blockchain, they can on-ramp people to a blockchain, they can use the technology, but they don't really have to offer the whole volatile part. And they can actually offer a T-bill yield from USDC, from stable coins, create a really nice experience around it with on-ramping, off-ramping, customer service and everything, even offer remittance services on top of it. So those use cases are really easy to explain, easy to understand. There's a really big middle class evolving, with smartphones and everything, and they need banking. The more and more they have smartphone penetration, the more they understand, actually maybe we don't need a bank. So yeah, it's really interesting how they're like leapfrogging the rest of the world with those financial services. In some places in Africa, it's much easier to buy Bitcoin than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Some places in the world, it feels like financial infrastructure or just any kind of digital infrastructure has kind of leapfrogged a lot of infrastructure that you have in first world countries because they just didn't go through those same periods and cycles.
I think you'll find a really big correlation between countries with Visa relative to countries without visas. Like if you look at India, they have Stripe, they have Visa. but actually most of their transactions are done through the central bank, through UPI. If you look at Brazil, same thing. If you look at China, of course, same thing. Most of Asia is very similar, except the countries that have a high Visa penetration. In Europe, North America, and every other place you have a lot of Visa, like plastic card users, you have a lot of cash. In every country that doesn't have Visa, nobody's using cash. And I think that that's a really big tell, and that we're actually constrained by, infrastructure that is 40, 50 years old, and we're calling it advanced.
Exactly. I live in Medellin, Colombia, down here in Latin America, and it's the same thing. Like the infrastructure, you walk outside is really bad. It's really poor. It's really ugly. It doesn't look very good. There's not a lot of money that's been invested into it, but they're running fiber optic through half the buildings, and they have great connectivity and Wi-Fi and internet access, and everything's digitized, and everyone's trading in crypto still now, and everyone's, digitally, if they're using pesos or they're converting from dollars, a lot of it is digital now, despite everything else looking like it's, 30, 40, 50 plus years old. It's a good example of how technology can kind of help society leapfrog forward, especially when they didn't go again through those adjustment cycles like other first world countries. So it's very fascinating, and I'm not surprised. Like when you look in Africa, you look in Latin America, and you see a heavy usage of Bitcoin, even more so over their fiat currency, and it actually makes more sense than people would realize at face value.
In some places, that's the only option. Like if you go to Lebanon, they use Tether a lot. If you go to people that left Russia and they need to send money home, they suddenly learn about Tether. They don't need to know how it works, um, or which blockchain it's using. And yeah, I think Colombia is a really interesting story. I've been there, and it's remarkable how you see people with the phone. You have a phone, you have a job, and you don't need a lot more than that, right? That's the paradigm shift in the last few decades.
More people here have a smartphone, probably twice as much than they do an actual physical computer. Go figure. And it's weird in the US, like everyone has a computer in the US, but here it's like as long as you have a smartphone, you're connected. You can get a job, you can work.
And just I'm curious, do they use like MetaMask, for instance? It's mostly a desktop wallet. How do they hold crypto? Uh, like what's the usage profile? Is it Trust Wallet, or they just have like a basic Bitcoin account?
Yeah, they'll use MetaMask, they'll use Binance. Binance is pretty well usable through their native app on smartphones as well here in Colombia. So a lot of people, if they want to onboard or offboard, um, or sorry, on ramp, off ramp from crypto in Colombia, they'll use Binance. They'll use the P2P feature as well. Banks are getting a little bit more friendly with it, little by little. There's some other exchanges and stuff that have popped up here and there. There's a lot of neo banking here as well, and a lot of third-party apps that work with banks that will touch crypto too. So there's a lot more solutions than people realize, and then there's a lot of people that also accept it. So you can walk around through a lot of popular areas, and you can pay for things with Bitcoin too, which is kind of cool. Trading desks and whatnot are popping up all over the place, and then yeah, you can use things like MetaMask as well to kind of interact with the Web3 space. So again, it's more connected than people realize. It's just a matter of, I think, seeing it in person, because you don't think about it when you think of Colombia. But it's here. It really is. And it's fascinating. To start wrapping up the episode, would love to know a bit more about what's on your guys' roadmap and horizon for the rest of this year. For Fuse Network, do you guys have any new products you're putting into your product suite that might be coming up? Anything people should keep an eye out for on your guys' roadmap and timeline? And then along that, are you guys going to be at any events or engagements this year where people maybe can meet up with you guys in person? What should we know? What's on your guys' schedule?
So actually, it's going to be a big 2 months, we're going to be at Denver doing 3 events. So if you're following our channels, you can meet us there in person. We also about to launch our node sale. And as we discussed Ember a second ago, this whole migration is going to be very festive because it's coming with an airdrop. It's kind of similar to what Sonic did, the Phantom Sonic migration. We're doing this Fuse Ember migration. The whole idea is to offer an opportunity for people to discover what we did in the last 5 years, test the products, including the Edison AI product that is going to be launched next month. Right now, we're kind of testing it, but it's under late stages of development. People can pay for the service, including the middleware and the gas, and really test our account abstraction platform and use Edison to actually, kind of see it in action. Because if you need to be a developer to understand how Fuse works, it kind of makes Fuse less interesting. So Edison, in my opinion, is a really big selling point. And our business model is a really big selling point, and the ZK VM we're launching. So those are like the three big, I would say, announcements the next 2 months with this migration. But around it, there's a lot of things that I can't really share yet. Whether it's DeFi in deployments on Fuse for lending, for DEXs, new bridges, new oracles, new stable coins, native yield. So there's like a lot of stuff around partnerships with MEV providers. So we never did MEV on Fuse. So this new technology and the modular approach just opens up so many opportunities, whether it's DA that we never really had, new bridges that, like for instance, Agler, like every CDK chain is automatically integrated with Polygon Agler. So it means instant bridging because ZK bridges are, I would say that one of the main selling points for ZK Tech is better UX. So that's something that. So anyway, there's a really big pipeline. Further down the road, privacy. This year, we're going to push our roadmap in a few weeks, and everybody can review and give us feedback. But that's the plan in the nutshell.
And then do you guys have a community anywhere where people can kind of congregate and chit chat about field? Do you have a Telegram, Discord, something similar elsewhere?
Yeah, so our main channels are Discord, sorry, our Telegram and Twitter, and we will share on the podcast all our links. Check out our website to see the links, but we'll also share on the channel.
Awesome, man. Mark, this has been fantastic. Really do appreciate you taking the time today to talk about Fuse and what you guys are working on. Keep it up, man. I think, helping build out these rails and ways for people to get access to Web3, especially from Web2, and these businesses, especially the small and medium-sized ones, have been neglected, I think, for a long time. And building out good ways for them to interact, good UX and UI, and providing awesome products in your product suite. And then Edison, I think, is really cool too. Excited to see a little bit more about that as well as it continues to roll out. So keep me updated on everything, man, as everything comes to fruition this year. And we'll do a part 2 as well and talk about some of those updates. But appreciate it. Thank you for coming on again.
Thanks. Looking forward for it. And it was a pleasure.
Likewise.
Talk soon.
Talk soon, man. Take care.